In this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on whether you should submit a complete book manuscript to a press for review or a sample chapter and a book proposal. Hi, I'm Tom Mullaney, and this is First Gen Professor, where we discuss how to navigate an academic career. So a question that often comes up is whether or not it's better to take longer to write a complete book and then send that complete book for formal review by a press, or whether you should concentrate on writing a few sample chapters and then crafting a book proposal and attempting to get a contract that way. And I'd like to discuss the pros and cons of both of those. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you my verdict for which one I think is better. Let's begin with pros for the sample book chapter and book proposal strategy. First, and most obviously, this route can be faster because you are not trying to write the complete book, but rather just a portion of it. You can get that in the hands of an editor and get an advanced contract earlier than you would if you wrote a complete book for formal review. Now, I am going to come back to this question of advanced contract and put a little asterisk there. An advanced contract is different than a contract, so let's come back to that. But it is a faster route, and that's especially important, let's say, if you're coming up for a promotion, you're going on the job market, something where you need in hand, look, I have an advance contract from such and such press for my work, and that should go in my favor for promotion or for consideration for a position. A second pro for this is that when at an early stage you submit a sample and a book proposal, the chances there that either the editor or the press or the anonymous reviewers will help you catch potential problems early. So let's say that the reviewer, based on your sample chapter and proposal, raises some issues that you yourself really hadn't thought of. Well, then that means that you have the benefit of that insight before you write the rest of the book. And that can save you trouble in the long run, or, provide insight that will deepen and strengthen the work that you eventually produce. Third, and related, is that you can get feedback sooner. So not just potential problems, but you can get the anonymous reader reports and the editor's report back for your sample chapters and your book proposal. And that can help inform your writing and your research process there on out. Now, of course, for a full book, you also get critical feedback, but we have to acknowledge that when a book is complete, perhaps you're a little bit more set in your ways when it comes to approaches or potential source bases and so forth. So that's another benefit. Fourth, and this is kind of underscoring that first point, is that it can be really good when you're coming up for reappointment or tenure review, or you're going on the job market, to be able to say in your CV that it's under contract, that such and such project is under contract with a press. I've been in countless conversations and review committee meetings in which the name of the university press for a person's project is cited and actually influences the decision, typically in the positive direction. And I would say that by and large, one rarely hears the qualification that, oh, this is an advanced contract, it's not a complete contract. One typically doesn't hear that in discussion, but does hear that such and such works, this applicant's work, this reviewee's work is under contract with the press, and that's a good thing. Here are the pros, however, of writing the complete manuscript before you submit it to the press for review. First, if you land a contract with a complete book manuscript, that is, it's sent out for review, the reader reports come back in, you go through that entire process. I'm actually going to make a video about the whole publication process. But if you get a book contract offer based on a complete book, what that means is this contract is real. It is solid. You can build a house on it. An advance contract is a little bit of a shaky instrument sometimes. Advance contracts can be issued by a press even prior to formal review in certain cases. And even when a book chapter sample and a book proposal is sent out for review to anonymous reviewers and goes through that whole process, technically speaking, the press reserves the right to, once the full book comes in from the author, based on that advance contract, to send it back out for a complete and more formal review prior to actually issuing a rock-solid contract. So now this varies from press to press, but what I'm saying here is that an advance contract and a contract are not the same thing, or at least you should not assume it is the same thing. If you have an advance contract based on a writing sample and a book proposal, and then you go on to write, let's just say, a totally crap-ass book, it is totally within the right of that press to say, no deal, all bets off, this doesn't pass muster. And you might say, wait a minute, we had a contract. Say, no, 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 we had an advance contract, and that's a little bit different. So when you are starting to investigate, really ask around, ask any friends or colleagues who has gone through the process based on a sample chapter and a book proposal to say, what happened when you sent in the complete manuscript? Was it another review, another process? What happened at your press? So that you can start to know how different presses handle this. Now, I should say this, that presses are not run by jerks. And so if an editor is going to issue you an advance contract, I think you can operate under the good faith assumption that they really do want to publish your work, and that, short of something really devastating, that when you submit the complete manuscript and maybe they send it back out for more feedback, that they still want to publish it. It just, what I'm underlying here is that an advance contract and a contract are technically not the same species. A second benefit to submitting a complete book is that you get feedback on the complete book. This is a process where you're sending this out to anonymous reviewers, top minds in the field with an expertise in your area. And if you just send a sample chapter and a book proposal, they can do what they can do with that amount of material in terms of giving you anonymous, critical, or supportive feedback. But what they're able to give you is far less than what they could if they had the entire book in their hands. The depth, the extent, the nuance of the reviews has a higher potential, let's say, ceiling than in the case of a sample chapter. It's just basic math. So when you actually submit a complete book manuscript, you can get much, much more substantive feedback back. And even in cases when there's a two-part review, submit a sample chapter with the book proposal, they send it out, get initial feedback, and then you write the book and they send it back out. They might not send the complete manuscript back out to all of those original reviewers. They might send it out to a smaller subset. So by and large, in my experience, I do think that you get more substantial and just sheer quantity of feedback when you submit the complete book than when you submit a proposal. A third benefit, and this is one that I really think you should take to heart, in a certain sense summons Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet here. And this has to do with the condition in which you want to write your book. Do you want to write your book in a sense of quietude and kind of interiority and privacy, that you get a chance to really work through the problems of the book, the wrinkles, the exciting possibilities, all of those things you have to work out? Do you want to work that out for yourself and then present a draft result of that work to a review committee and then, of course, incorporate their feedback? Or do you want to kind of come up with a very polished chapter, a book proposal that dreams all of these big dreams and is very sort of, again, proposally, which is fictional, get feedback, and then start the process of writing your book a little bit with the feeling of people looking over your shoulder. They might not, they probably have forgotten you even exist, but there is the feeling that since I got the book based on the contract or an advance contract based on a proposal and the book sample chapter, that these people, these anonymous people and my editor are kind of in the room with me as I complete the work. Now there's a feeling that it's almost as if writing and researching is fulfilling a commissioned piece of writing, which is a different feeling, at least in my experience, than writing something in that sort of in that quietude that Rilke talks about, and then debuting it to the world. Now, this doesn't mean that you write it in a vacuum or that you don't get any critical feedback, or you're still going to give talks and do writing workshops and share it with writing clubs and all of that sort of stuff and get critical feedback. But the idea of a formal contract, this is something that you need to ask yourself. Do you work well when you feel like there are people looking over your shoulder? Do you not even feel like there are people looking over your shoulder? In my case, I do my best work when I can kind of figure out my shit for myself with all of these, giving talks, Q&A, feedback, all of that stuff. But when I can figure this shit out for myself and then submit it to a group of people and say, okay, rip it apart, do your worst. But at least I feel like I've kind of come to terms with some of my ideas here. You have to answer that for yourself. For me, the book, full book approach is by far the clear winner in that debate. Another way to say is that there are fewer cooks in the kitchen. Okay, so in my experience, when I come down to the verdict here, I would say that by and large, the approach that I would recommend is write the book. Write the book, get it into the form that you believe in. You've worked through all of those, those challenging areas. You've changed the table of contents. You've changed the structure. You've figured out the sort of narrative red threads. You've done all that stuff in the quiet of your own office, in your own home, in your own wherever. And then you have let it see the real light of day of anonymous review and begun that process, as opposed to kind of selling a vision of a book that doesn't exist yet, and then going through that very awkward psychological process of kind of fulfilling that obligation and worrying whether you are, and worrying whether or not you can make changes and all of that stuff. I would say that barring any unforeseen kind of issues here, that writing the complete book is at the end of the day the better way to go. However, and here we come to the kind of extenuating circumstances, except if you are coming up for reappointment review, if you're coming up for tenure review, if you're coming up for some sort of major, career level review, or if you're going on the job market. In those situations, it might just simply be worth it to have the ability to say, under contract with the University of blah, blah, blah press, on your CV. It kind of validates your work. It says the outside world has blessed this work in some sense, and that has real monetary, financial, and career level value. Let's not lie about it. So in those cases, I would say, sure, go for the sample chapter, book proposal route, get that advanced contract, and then of course, you may have to deal with all those issues I brought up, but it will be worth it. But if you don't have those issues and there's no big clock ticking above your head, I would say that short period of that dopamine hit of getting an advanced contract that makes you feel like you're on top of the world is not worth all of the psychological battles that follow that process, as compared to simply writing the damn book. Well, that's all I have for you today. If you found this useful in any way, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and above all, I'd really appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next video.